Thank you, Leslie, Omar, and Cooper Union for the invitation to share today. And hello and good evening to all of you tuning in from your various places and spaces. Your presence is a gift. Get well soon. A space created for exercises in getting well soon, a reckoning with the culturally abstracted terms wellness and hope. Get well soon. A loose and often used phrase indicating a hope of recovery. Generic get well soon greeting cards can be found in pharmacies and hospital gift shops around the country to be given to those ailing and in pain. I first consciously encountered the phrase on a series of helium balloons at the Dollar Tree. The floating silver orb was aggressive in its hopefulness. I searched myself, contemplating whether my pain was worthy of this silvery floating orb. I yearned for a hope that could be bought, not too dissimilar to birthday, anniversary, or holiday gifts and cards that persons unwell receive, the card in the midst of their unwellness. Time is a crucial factor in this exchange. When is it too early? When is it too late? How does one get too well? These gifts and cards of acknowledgement are symbols of care. The recipient is invited to imagine themselves, make themselves whole sooner than later. Intended to encourage, riddled with expectations, wishful thinking. What ailments deserve acknowledgement? Cards and balloons, disposable symbols. How soon is soon on the linear timeline? This phrase is not about specifics or context. Like the lifeless gifts of the card and balloon, one must breathe life into its hollowness, setting intentions in the blank spaces. Wellness is said to be the pursuit of good health as an active goal. Good is said to be things that are desired. Health is said to be a state of physical, mental well-being, void of disease, infirmity. Disease sometimes is said to be disorder. If repeated over and over again, like the phrase, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, will this wellness soon arrive? Not too dissimilar to feel better, feel better, feel better. I was told to get well soon more times than I can remember between 2012 and 2016. I don't have a problem. It's y'all. It's 2020 and we are in a global pandemic. We have lost many and we struggle to access the care we so desperately need and deserve. COVID-19 and the responses of our nation and our local governments have emphasized the already fraught conditions for those of us living in the margins. The fumbled and disgraceful response by those in positions of power comes as no surprise to those who have been fighting for liberation from these racist, classist, ableist, sexist, LGBTQI hating, immigrant hating, it's humans. Words. I do not possess the words despite my speaking, to fully describe the ruptures and shifts I've experienced. I've worked hard to put these words together and hope to share what I can about interests I had and things I did before everything changed and much stayed the same. Okay. Questions I asked. So one of the main questions that's featured on the website in the description is, what is wellness and how can it be maintained whilst living with and despite white supremacy, anti-Black racism, policing, and prisons? The sort of wellness that was being marketed in 2016 when I asked this question was of the group variety. I don't know if you guys know group. It was or is an initiative by Gwyneth Paltrow. Magazines about face masks and superfoods and tarot. The mindfulness meditation offered by employers instead of full health coverage and paid sick leave. This wellness is of the privileged variety. What I believe I was getting at then is, how does one, or how do we collectively resist and cope, if possible, with the breaking, the weathering under the weight of systemic abandonment, social death, post-traumatic slave syndrome, the I am the Black body? Is it possible that there is no word that I know that can describe this escape? The body. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Saw that on a meme on Instagram. They said with wonder and admiration, you are still alive like hydrogen, like oxygen. Dion Brand. Wellness, to return to the question, as I now understand it, would be a complete dismantling of the systems built of exploitation and torture, and a reimagining a world abundant with care and accessibility and reparations and resource distribution, all centered an abolitionist dream. The second question, how do time and duration of trauma, sadness, and labor shape Black people's bodies and choreograph their movements? There has been no end to the suffering of my ancestors, and it makes my head hurt. The doctor don't see my pain, and the therapist can't hear my cries. Bang, 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 skeet, skeet, skeet. I dip to feel light. I get light to feel all right. Don't hurt nobody. They say I'm angry, and they don't know the half. You ever see a body bent, linked, and leaning, suspended and anchored, head, shoulder, torso dangling, head up, held back by some invisible furniture, head, shoulders, arms, hips, head rested on a shoulder only they can feel. They are tethered to something in someplace deep. This is not a dance. I've seen the faces of my friends carved with the sadness of loss, not natural, undeserved. We all die too soon, if you ask me. Endlessly, we all exist beyond, with powers unknown, in all the ways known and unknown, where I am now. Asking those questions, being in the space of the exercises, I've come to understand my limitations in thinking through my body and thinking about wellness in my body and the privilege that I hold, from those who have written and live and fight for disability justice. And these are two quotes that currently are a part of that stewing process that are necessary for me as I return to these exercises. Two quotes by Lydia X.Z. Brown. You cannot engage disability without confronting the body, the frail, vulnerable, traumatized, precarious, neurodivergent, unpredictable, unruly, unstable, incoherent, or non-compliant body. Quote 2. We can't talk about any oppression like racism, transmisogyny, classism, adultism without addressing ableism. Ableism is both dependent on and necessary for every other form of oppression to exist. Attending to disability is radical because it allows us to grapple with our own and others' bodies and all their complexities. That means rethinking whose and what types of labor we consider valuable versus lesser, disposable and forgettable, whose performance of radicalism is praised versus inadequate or insufficient, whose traumas we center versus dismiss or erase, whose bodily narratives we consider acceptable versus who we consider threatening or undermining. Lack of access, isolation, and stigma that is violence. This is a quote taken from Radical Disability Politics. I will be sharing with you 3 of the many exercises in Getting Well Soon this evening. You Black and Blues, 2018, is a site-specific work that made use of the architecture and positionality of Abrams Art Center to wrestle with the they versus us paradigm through sound and movement and tableau. This exercise was a triptych, 3 days. Day 1 was titled Prayer. Day 2, Protest. Day 3, A Peace. Questions. What is the sound of an opening? What spaces facilitate an understanding of the power of body position and architectural generosity? And other things that I've forgotten. So that was sound from day one prayer of You Black and Blue. So right now, just to remind you, I am showing you a video clip from day 3 of You Black and Blue called A Piece.
If I had to be born all over again, I would ask the Lord to let me to be born black than what I am now. If I had to be born all over again, I would ask the Lord to let me to be born black than what I am now.
Way to go. Whew. A happening in the Bronx, a website. The city is making me sick and I don't know why. What can brutalist architecture, Black people in New York City, a latter and mundane task tell us about care and isolation? These walls don't bend to your wills. These walls are final and non-negotiable. These somebody else's walls. Plans and programming, falling and expanding, these walls punish and protect. They shame us for not being hammers. Maybe we need a ladder. Somewhere in New York, another one of us yearns for help, hold, ease, from the depths of their supposed singularity, interrupted and paused, stuck yet moving frantically on the inside, exterior spaces too slippery, wrapped in caution tape, exhausted. What is there to hold when the outside is inside, like a parachute, like an accordion, like lungs? Displaced, tangled, bruised. Somewhere in the city, I know that you can see the sky and the walls aren't so high and lows aren't so cold and deep and damning, and the walls get out of the way. They don't stop the flow of movement. The walls excuse themselves, account. And wellness is a gift shop, and care is a building, is a person, is a practice, is a group called escape, called maybe. Someplace, somewhere, we find we are in a group, and we are tasked with sharing, being together. We are confronted with our own refusal to be together or to be at all in fragments, contained in various tender packages, moist and spilling, existing in these pieces with conflicting diagnosis and intersecting traumas, an overwhelming feeling of undeservedness and a sense of desperation, of limited time and capacity. Somehow, somewhere, we decide to try to do something, anything, a thing, to make our together, to make space for someday, someone, in some place. Someday, someone in some place will call what we do here building body ladder a strategy, a medicine, a movement. Push it. Exercise 1 in getting well soon. The goal was to show up, to be present physically in a space in which I was expected to present myself as an artist concerned with movement and motion, moving in front of a live, seated audience. Black people were killed in front of a live audience, and the videos were going viral, millions of likes. On and off stage, off and on, there is no space inherently in performance for the Black performer, performing artist, dancer, theater, live artist, because you are still bound to the pre-existing oppressive conditions of your lived reality. Through performance, it can be possible, maybe, to access a sort of power that gives weight to one's actions and words, and if only temporarily, can afford you more access to care. I was interested ultimately in how to use the relationship of curators and programmers and their interest in me as a performer to explore, to create moments of togetherness for myself when I was experiencing a lot of loneliness in my practice, meant to be about and for Black people, but was often devoid of Black people. I move real slow, and then I hit it. Mundane and fantastical, this is all me. I began to push it in areas where I knew Black people would be. Most cities in the US have a Martin Luther King Boulevard. I would try and start there, and I would make my way to the venue, a glitch. I would try and start there and make my way to the venue, to arrive in a space once occupied, currently occupied, and create a disruption with the intent to initiate a shift. Initiate a shift with the intent to create a disruption currently occupied in a space. Choreography? Choreography. To move with the weight and with the lift and restriction and the motivation and the internal rhythm. Questions. What conditions need to be arranged for the performer to be given the time and attention and money allocated to technical elements of performance making, lights, cameras, sound equipment, etc. The action is to arrive at Performances about everything and nothing. The conclusion is important to do and make as a way to understand the mechanisms. Form, power, what I could say about things that felt impossible to approach without performative action. These spaces, physical, mental, and emotional, encouraged me to ask more grounded, specific, and inclusive questions that went beyond centering my own body and urgencies, questions that reach farther from my center. When you ask me how I'm doing in 2021, I'm gonna say far from well.